Welcome into Bet the Edge, the college football show presented by BetMGM. I'm Brad Thomas here with Eric Froton and Vaughn Delzell. Fellas, we are in the thick of conference play. Finally, I'll start with you, Vaughn. Any takeaways from last week you want to talk about?
Man, last week, a lot of nail biters again. I think that what I came back to this week was looking at a lot of teams that had bye weeks coming up, a lot of teams that had tough road tests back to back, or teams that are playing really tough competition in physical games, which we're going to talk about a few teams today that are going from one big house to another big house and playing some really tough opponents. So there's going to be more games, I think, where we could take shots at maybe first quarter spreads, some first quarter unders, those types of nature. So I'm looking at a lot of teams with rest advantages and rest disadvantages right now.
Eric Froton, I know you have to be excited. More data, more guys getting in and out of lineups or player props. Any takeaways from last week?
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw that Michigan-USC game, a incredible Big Ten matchup that we love here on NBC, of course. And our guy, Khalil Mullings, we've seen him really take charge of that Michigan backfield, just bludgeoned USC on the ground. And I think we see more of that out of Mr. Mullings this week. We'll see if USC can handle Wisconsin, who also likes to run the ball a little bit. So that'll be a fun matchup to look ahead to.
With my takeaway from last week, I'm going to kind of reiterate what Thor said. If you guys don't follow him, Thor on X, it is important to be paying attention. Get your bets in early for college football player props. We'll look at Alex Orji, for example. He opened up at 40 and a half, got up to about 44 and a half by kickoff, and he took a couple sacks late, ended up only cashing those first two numbers, and you missed out on all the others. So I think it's really important. Pretty much what I do, my strategy is I circle the games that I'm really interested in waiting for the player props. I set my projections, and then I just literally just click refresh about every hour until those player props come, and I jump on the guys I want just because I don't want to miss out on the number. It's always okay if you think a number is going to kind of get bigger to just bet the other side and get a big middle if you're kind of uncomfortable with it. But without further ado, let's get into the biggest game of the week. Number 2, Georgia taking on number 4, Alabama. Game's at 7:30 p.m. Georgia, 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to kick it over to you first, Vaughn.
And this is a tough game, Brad. I see you rocking the Bama stuff here, but there's a lot of trends that I'm really confused on how to approach this game because obviously we don't get a top 5 matchup very often in college football, let alone in the same exact conference. But Alabama has been in favor for 113 consecutive games, home games, that is. The last time they were a home dog was in 2007 against LSU at Matt Flynn. The last time they were underdog versus anyone except Georgia was when Tim Tebow was a quarterback in 2009. So this is such an interesting situation with Nick Saban not being the head coach anymore and Alabama being in this role. But we know that Georgia hasn't been the best either against the spread when it comes to playing Alabama or straight up. 1-8 straight up, 4-5 against the spread in the last 9. And this makes a situation where I know you have to like Alabama, and as the week gets closer to Saturday, I'm liking Bama more and more too. But I'm also thinking Jalen Milroe anytime touchdown is probably the angle. His Heisman campaign really relies on him finding the end zone, not only with his arm but with his legs in this game, I think. So that's kind of where I'm headed right now is a Jalen Milroe touchdown. But I'm leaning Alabama, and I don't know if I'm crazy or not, Brad. But I know you're crazy, so you're on Bama already, right?
I'll put it this way. So I bet Alabama money line. But if we're talking from a value standpoint, the value now at plus 110 is pretty much sucked out of the building. You were a lot higher at the open. It got a little Georgia buy, and it's went all the way back down to Alabama love. I don't think that I would recommend playing plus 110, even though I do think Alabama is the better side. Georgia here so far this season, they've struggled to find their identity offensively, right? We can kind of scratch that first game off because they didn't have ETN, but ETN comes in the backfield. He struggled against Kentucky. And I want to say struggled because he ended up getting about 70, maybe 80 yards in that game. But for the first 3 quarters, he was on a milk carton somewhere missing. And you can't play like that against an Alabama team who's explosive if you fail to move the sticks. They've been pretty bad first and second down, also even worse third and fourth down. And what I really want to highlight, they've been really, really bad against the run. And you could say it's really bad because they played against a team who ran the ball with their lead back 22 times in Kentucky. Success, right? Like I don't care. Like, if you're still going to allow over the 100-yard mark against a team like Kentucky, you're going to be in trouble. Alabama's going to run the ball a ton. Brings me to my play that I put in this game. The line did move, and I'm going to tell you what line I played it at. It moved in about, 10, 15 minutes. I played Jam Miller over 40.5 rushing yards. It's all the way up to 40. I think at some spots, 47.5. I wouldn't play it past the 45, 47. But Jam Miller's, he is the lead back. He's going to get the bulk of the carries, but more so than being the lead back, he's the explosive back. He's the guy who has the jets and the chops to just absolutely turn it on. So I like Alabama here to win, but not going to really suggest a bet, but I do suggest you get Jam Miller. If you can get him around 40, 45, that's an absolutely great spot. You're starting to get a little dicey when you get to the 47s or 50s.
Yeah, I agree. And I like that Jamarian Miller over 45.5 rushing yards too. 40.5 was a great line.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the Georgia rush defense, as you kind of alluded to. They rank 130th in opportunity rate. They have a 59% opportunity rate. So you're able to advance the ball forward on them, and they rank 85th in rushing success rate. So with Jam Miller and obviously with Alabama being so run-oriented in terms of their play script so far this year, I think that's certainly a good look. And on the other side, the gambler in me just can't help but be interested in some of the low lines we're seeing for the Alabama wide receivers. Now, as we know with Jalen Milroe, he doesn't throw often, but when he does, he's doing it downfield, and they're hunting deep. With Ryan Williams, the sensational 5-star freshman who reclassified this year to be able to play in this game, I mean, that's why he's here. He has crushed his 45.5 receiving yards line in each of his last 3 games, and all 3 of his games showed up. 139 against Western Kentucky, 68 against South Florida, 78 against Wisconsin last game. He's had a touchdown, at least 1 in each, proven himself to be a linchpin of the passing game, and both he and Jeremy Bernard were both in that low 40s range, are the clear 1 and 2 receivers for this Alabama team. Everyone else, when it comes to their snap rate, Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law, they're less than half of the snaps of these 2 receivers. So I like the idea of a Ryan Williams hitting a big home run. That's what Alabama wants to do. And I'm going to take us over along with Jam Miller. I like both of those.
Let's go.
Seems like you guys are pretty
very reasonable lines. They're very reasonable.
Yeah, they are. I mean, people are probably expecting. I mean, I feel like the public's going to be all over Georgia here, just because of how good they've been in the regular season for so long, and the not having Nick Saban factor is going to be enough for some people to say that's enough to bet Georgia too, probably. But you guys continue to talk about all the weapons that Alabama has. Brad, I want to ask you that Jalen Milroe last year posted his lowest passing grade, PFF passing grade of the season against Georgia, and they blitzed him on almost 49% of his dropbacks last year, getting pressure on 40% of those. Do you think that there's going to be a different type of situation where Milroe doesn't have to be under pressure like that? Do you think there's a situation where Georgia still does get that pressure?
2 things to answer that question. Number one, how do you beat a blitz? You run at the blitz. I think the running game this year is much better than it was last year. But also to build on that, the offensive line is a lot better so far through the 2-game sample size that we have with almost all of the weapons back. So they're absolutely going to want to blitz Milroe, make him uncomfortable. But when you have these big play guys as well, like a Ryan Williams or a Jeremy Bernard, it kind of helps also like take that pressure off him. Like before, he was throwing to guys who weren't getting open. Now he's throwing to guys who are absolutely dynamic. Kirby Smart's going to blitz. He's going to bring the heat. If this offensive line holds up, I expect a big weekend out of Mr. Jalen Milroe.
I like that. I'm hoping so too, man. I might sprinkle a few touchdowns, but that's for the latter plays later. We'll get to
that. Yes. Listen, I want to say one more thing about this game. Right now, you have Cam Ward, who's about plus 400 to win the Heisman. Jalen Milroe's 3rd favorite, plus 600-ish. As you guys know, I'm on Jalen Milroe. He was my single shot preseason. I jumped on Alshon Jeanty at 50-1. Ashton Jeanty, excuse me for disrespecting the man, getting his name wrong. I think that this game gives Jalen Milroe the opportunity to be the Heisman favorite come Monday, because he doesn't even need to play remarkable. He needs to have maybe contribute to 2, maybe 3 touchdowns. Don't turn the ball over and win the game. They're going to be like, wow. Because you remember what Cade Klubnik did against Georgia early in the season. I mean, did against Georgia early in the season. And then now Cade Klubnik now against all the other teams, he's looking like a beast, right? So people will look at that. Voters will look at that. Bettors will look at that and say, man, Jalen Milroe might be the real deal. And I think he has the coaching staff and the weapons to absolutely kind of move that along there. So I'm really excited. Any thoughts on that, Vaughn?
No, I'm with you 100%. I don't think that Miami has a tough enough schedule with Cam Ward to win that. Like, Cam Ward's going to put up good numbers. Miami's going to be one of the best teams in the country as long as standings, but just a situation where he beats all the teams he beats in a weak ACC, and Jalen Milroe in the SEC beats Georgia and the rest of their competition. You got to give it to Milroe, especially with all the rushing touchdowns he's had. So I like that call.
Yeah, Eric, do you have any thoughts on this? Will this solidify him as the Heisman favorite after the weekend?
Well, I do have a 100-1 ticket on Travis Hunter. So I am hoping that if Travis Hunter is the front runner, maybe I can get a little cash out on that ticket. But he's certainly in the conversation. And one thing that kind of gives me a little bit of pause is we've seen this out of Miami before. We've gotten excited about the Hurricanes and been let down. And their schedule so far has been very easy. Obviously, they took out Florida, which looks pretty good, which they played well last week. Miami wants Florida to go and run the table if they can to make that win look even better. But the last 3 games, it's been cupcake city. They have had no issues just carving those 3 defenses up. They've won at an average score of 51-11 over the first 4 games. So they really haven't been challenged. The problem is with Virginia Tech is this is like a dark horse, sort of a sleeper for the ACC championship game, and that has not materialized in year 3 of Brent Pry. Kyron Drones, we were hoping to see him sort of improve as a passer. He had a 13-14 big-time throw to turnover-worthy play rate last year. That has not gotten any better at all. He's still at the 5-to-5 ratio, and even though he can run a little bit, man, you got to be able to throw. You can't be a solo threat, solo threat quarterback as opposed to a dual threat. And that's what I'm seeing out of Kyron Drones. So, obviously you got to like what you see out of Miami. If they go and tank out Virginia Tech in convincing fashion, Cam Ward throws for 4 touchdowns, then yes, Brad, I will acquiesce. He will be the Heisman frontrunner.
Let's move it over to the next game. Oklahoma State versus Kansas State, number 20 versus number 23. Kansas State, a 4.5-point favorite. Eric, I'm actually going to kick it to you first because this was going to be one of my plays, Mr. Brennan Presley, under 68.5 receiving yards. I'm excited to see it. Even the one anomaly where he went over, it took 12 targets in a game where they were playing against Arkansas. So I'm really excited. Tell me why you like Mr. Presley under.
Well, respectfully, Brad, it wasn't 12 targets. It was 19 targets.
That's what it was. That's
what for him to go over. Yeah, you got 19 against
over 2.
Jeez.
That Arkansas game was full-on Wild West shootout style. Corral. I mean, everything you wanted. 39-31. They held off Arkansas, even though they only had like a 13% post-game win expectancy. That was a wild game. That being said, like you said, 19 targets in the other 3 games: Utah, Tulsa, SDSU. 47, 46, and 35. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's the slot receiver, and he has a 5.5-yard ADOT, 5.5. So he's averaging 8 yards per reception. Even if he's getting, those 7-8 targets, he is not extending the play. And what does Kansas State's defense give up? They give up the big plays through the air, but they're generally not going to get hurt on the short stuff. So I just think, game script wise, I'm trying to project this out, being at Kansas State with Alan Bowman getting pulled last week in favor of Garrett Rangel. Garrett Rangel goes 3 for 11. They have to put Alan Bowman back in.
Yeah.
That is not the situation I want to see going into this important Big 12 tilt at Kansas State. I'm sorry, but with, Brendan Presley at 68.5 receiving yards, where he's only hit 47, 46, and 35 in 3 of these 4 games, I just think it's going to take a lot for him to get there, and I don't think he does.
Absolutely tailing you on that because that was on my list. It was funny because I was going to make an X post about it and said Presley had 90-something yards, but it took 19 targets to get there. Kind of crazy. Vaughn, do you have any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this game, I mean, you guys know Oklahoma State last week. Like, I had them plus 2.5, so that comeback, I watched that game, and it was also my girlfriend's birthday on Saturday. So I told her, like, we're going to be rich for your birthday. I have a bunch of free bonus bets. We're doing the ladders. Oklahoma State's kicking us off at 3:30. When I look at my phone and it's 19-3, I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? Start watching the game. Alan Bowman comes back. Still not enough. But regardless, the issues I have with Oklahoma State, man, how does Ollie Gordon have the 6th most carries in the country at 76 and only the 70th in rushing yards at 236? Alan Bowman's been sacked one time all season, though. They're literally cannot open up holes for him, but they are protecting the quarterback so well. And when you look at this matchup last year, different quarterback situation for K-State now. Avery Johnson is a phenomenal quarterback who's a dual threat. But you look at the 29-21 to score for Oklahoma State. They got that on a pick 6 before the half, 5 field goals made, and an Ollie Gordon touchdown. They needed all that just to beat Kansas State last year, and they were the home team. I like K-State here. I mean, if I'm playing this game, it's got to be the Wildcats. I also tweeted Brad, which we joked about earlier this week. I mean, if I bet Oklahoma State again this year, punch me in the face. It was that bad. When I started watching them in the first half, I had to turn it off. And I just think that this is a spot where K-State could probably beat them by a touchdown. And we know that favorites since 2020 in ranked matchups are 57% against the spread. So it certainly favors the Wildcats here too.
Listen, Vaughn, I'll tell you why Ollie Gordon's not getting going. Too much initial line contact. Basically, when he's running into defenders, not getting those big holes, those big opening lanes like he was getting last season. I actually handicapped this game from a running perspective because I thought there were some good numbers to either fade or to go over. Ultimately, I didn't take any of the guys. I think DJ Giddens is pretty nice around his number 94.5, but I just feel like 94.5. If I wanted, I'd want the 100, or I'd want it to be 89.5, 93 in a loss to BYU, 86 against Arizona, 114 against Tulane. And I marked this note that's really important to know that 114 was on 19 carries against a really good defensive line and a good front seven. I actually think the bet that I want, that I need these sports books to open up, is DJ Giddens carries, right? Home game, a game they're going to want to slow the pace down. They're going to kind of take the ball out of Avery Johnson's hands because he's not quite at that level where you put a lot of trust in a big home game in him. And that would be giving the ball to Giddens. The line's not available yet, so I had nothing on this game. Any thoughts to that before we move on to the next one?
Absolutely love that angle. Eric, how about you?
Yeah, with Louisville-Notre Dame here, Riley Leonard. What are we going to do about Riley Leonard is what I want to know, Brad Thomas. What do you, I mean, I know you like we know he can run the ball, right? Yeah. But when it comes to Notre Dame passing the ball, they rank 109th in terms of passing performance. They literally do everything they possibly can to avoid making Riley Leonard drop back to pass. I'm just convinced of this, and we've seen it against everybody. We saw him against NIU, the ill-fated Northern Illinois game. They were blessed by having Purdue, which is one of the worst rushing defenses in the entire country. I mean that literally, one of the worst in the country. And now they have to go and play Louisville, who gave them a hell of a time last year, if we remember Louisville-Notre Dame. Yes. I am taking Riley Leonard under 172.5 passing yards. I took him under passing yardage last game. I don't understand. I mean, it's still up there at 172. He was closer to 200 last game, but it's still, I don't see any reason to believe that they're going to be throwing any more than they have at any point. Yeah. So Jeremiah Love has been phenomenal. I wasn't sure if it was going to be him, was going to be Jerry and Price, who would be the lead guy. He has been excellent. He's leading the country in yards after contact. I just think we see a steady dose of that. When Louisville's defense, no joke defense. I mean, obviously they're pretty good on the line. Yep. Pass rush has been excellent. 10th against the run. I just think it'll be enough where these two are going to be battling in the trenches, just like they did last year. I think this is going to be falling under script. We're going to see plenty of running the ball out of Leonard, but I don't think that 172.5 in the passing yardage front. I don't think that I think it's too high. Yeah. And he hasn't been even sniffing that in terms of the first course of the season. So I can't help it. He hasn't hit it in 4 games yet. He's playing the best defense they've faced so far. Give me the under 172.5 from Riley Leonard.
Here's 4 numbers for you, Eric. Passing grade PFF, 125th ranked. Non-play action passing, 111th. Clean pocket, 110th. 10-yard passing grade, 149th. How many backups are ahead of this guy? I mean, he can't get the ball downfield. I'm with you. I mean, I mean, Notre Dame upset me last week. Obviously, I had the Miami, Ohio first half team total under 2.5. They kick a field goal, own all the time possession, and then they lose 28-3. So tough, definitely a tough beat. But Notre Dame, I don't think knows their identity offensively, Brad. And I think that's with Riley Leonard not being able to move the ball down the field except with his legs. So I'm with you. It looks like an underscript. I would take a snag in Louisville, but it's just because I have such disdain for, I think, go 0-4 now at Notre Dame this year. I mean, I'm done with them.
I feel that pain,
NBC
man.
product too. Notre Dame.
I was on that under as well for the team total in Northern Illinois. I actually going to take Riley Leonard's rushing over 46.5. Man had back-to-back 100-yard rushing games, but even more so, like all 4 games this season, he's had at least 11 rushing attempts. Like he would rather in any way possible move the chains with his legs than having to throw the ball. He's like terrified to throw because he knows it's going to be incomplete, right? We are talking about Riley Leonard, how bad he's been, but we have to put some ownership on the wide receiver core. I was watching that wide receiver core in the last game, just miscatch after miscatch. Of course, you're going to want to run the ball when your dudes can't catch a 5-yard out route, right? Like, what are you supposed to do? Even more so, we move over to Louisville. The 2 rushing quarterbacks that they had, the 2 running quarterbacks they played against, Haynes King ran for 58. I believe it was 14 carries. And Tyler Huff of Jacksonville State ran for 101. That was about 14 carries. That was 11 carries. So the 100 yards is possible. All I need is 50 out of Riley Leonard. You know he's going to be running the ball as much as he possibly can. Let's move over to the next game, the Friday Night Lights game, Virginia Tech versus number 7 Miami. The Hurricanes are a 19.5-point favorite. Total set at 54.5. And before we get into any spread size or total, I just feel like this is the line that we absolutely have to take. And that is Mr. Damian Martinez, 60+ rushing yards. He's been kind of just okay, right? Averaging about 4.8 yards per carry. Last game, only 2.8 yards per carry in that game. But we've seen out of South Florida so far this season that their run defense is no joke. That's probably what they can hang their hats on. He hasn't had to run the ball a ton, right? Like he's been only averaging about 12.5 carries per game because of the big, massive positive script that they've had. Well, now I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. The first real test they've had. I think they're going to lean on him a little bit more. I project him about 15 carries as his floor in this game, which means he needs to run for about it's actually 4 yards per carry in this game, which I think he can do. These holes for Virginia Tech, who haven't been good in their run defense, will be there. He just needs to get going. He had a couple big runs, even in the games where he only had like 11 carries. And I think he'll have a couple big ones in this one. So that's Damian Martinez, 60+ rushing yards. Eric, any thoughts on this game from a prop perspective or who you think's going to win and cover?
Yeah, I had a hard time. I looked at Damian Martinez and certainly have considered playing him. I just wish we had a little more consistency in terms of how they've been distributing the carries in that backfield. It's kind of been a game-by-game basis in the preseason, but as discussed, they weren't playing a particularly tough schedule. And I think there's probably a large element of, all right, let's keep Damian Martinez healthy. And then once you hit the ACC play, let's let him loose. As far as props, I've kind of shied away from this game for the reason, that we talked about a little bit before with Virginia Tech being just underperforming so drastically compared to what I expected to see from them in the preseason. So I'm going to respectfully lay off the props of this game and just enjoy my Friday night and hope that Cam Ward does my fantasy team justice.
I might ruin my Friday night by taking an under on the Rutgers game. I haven't decided yet. Rutgers, Washington, we'll see. But this is an interesting game because Miami is 4-0 against the spread. They haven't done that. They've only done that 3 times in the last 30 years. The first time since 2016. So them going 5-0 against the spread is obviously on the mind of a lot of people in Miami. And I think that's probably the angle that I would lean here. But I like Brad's play a lot for the reason that Virginia Tech ranks 93rd in EPA rush on defense, 73rd in rushing defensive success rate. When you look at that, that's all includes them against Rutgers, where they allow Rutgers 2.9 yards per rush. So outside of that game, they've been bad. And Rutgers isn't a team that's really going to offensively wow you in any way. So I do think Miami should cover this game, should win by 3 touchdowns. It just scares me that this is a primetime Friday night game that everybody's going to be betting. So this is probably a very, very sharp line in my opinion. But I like Brad's play a lot more than taking Miami here minus 19.5.
Yeah, quick tidbit before we get into the latter plays. Last Friday, all of the dogs covered the spread. What was it? two
Yeah.
outright wins. One of the dogs went to overtime, who was a double-digit dog in that one. But we're gonna hit the ladder plays. But first, I want to let you know it's a battle of AFC powers in Baltimore when Josh Allen and the Bills head south to face off against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Coverage of the matchup begins 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. My favorite segment, ladder plays. I feel like I haven't had this kind of success in ladder plays last season, but I'm like, feel like I'm walking on fire. I'm going to go back. But before I get into mine, because I already touched on mine, Eric, you have a handful and some that look really delicious. Plus 700 is what I'm seeing. Go ahead and give me your ladder plays.
Yeah, we're going to have a little fun. I mean, this is ladder time, so we want to go and shoot for the moon. I'm going to start off with Ethan Garber's Oregon at UCLA. That's a game we'll be going through later, but I'll touch on it now. Garber's 2 of the past 3 games, he has gone for 271, 281 yards. And the third one, I can forgive him. It's kind of game script wise. They just simply were not up to snuff against Indiana. They just went and it just totally got blown out. But they played better against LSU. They were there for pretty much through 3 quarters, and LSU managed to kind of take it and extend the lead in the 4th quarter. But threw for 281 yards, threw 36 times against Hawaii, threw 38 times. So when this UCLA team has gotten down, Eric Bieniemy, new offensive coordinator, has proven, look, we got to throw, and they will throw in order to play catch up. I sincerely think Oregon is not going to have a problem scoring on this UCLA team, which will put them in that catch up sort of a script. Currently, Ethan Garber is 225 plus passing yards, plus 335. And if you want to go 250 plus, like I said, he's hit that 2 of the last 2 or 3 games this year. 250 plus is plus 700 against an Oregon team that should be comfortably in the lead. I think that at 7-1, it's pretty enticing. It's happened 2 out of 3 times. Next, Cade Klubnik, quarterback for Clemson. We saw him 2 games ago go for 350. And frankly, he could have done it last game against NC State. He could have done pretty much anything he wanted against NC State. That game was like 52-14 before NC State finally got a couple of garbage time touchdowns and made it 59-35. But that game was a straight blowout. Only had to throw it 24 times. But the game before that against Appy, 24 of 26, complete 92% of his passes, 378 yards. I just think it's a case where Clemson, Stanford comes to town. I mean, it's everything you want to see. That Stanford defense is pitiful against the pass. It's just a matter of hopefully they can go with Clemson a little bit to keep the foot on the gas. If they feel like it, Klubnik can go for over 300 yards at plus 310. You could even maybe take a look at 325. You're going to go over there and get 5-1 odds.
Yep.
I'm just saying that's a pretty attractive line of 300 plus passing yards at 3-1 odds for Klubnik against a very soft Stanford pass defense. And then lastly, Shedeur Sanders. We've had a lot of Shedeur on this particular program. I think my friend Vaughn might have cashed a ladder play as well earlier in the season on Mr. Sanders. I know that he was very profitable on that particular play. And then again today, you see him, he's playing UCF. UCF is here to boat race. They want to go fast. They're going to score. And with Colorado, one of the worst run defenses in the country, UCF, one of the best rush offenses in the country. I love it. I think they go and they're going to score plenty, which means Colorado is going to be in the same script they were against Baylor, which is a far superior pass defense last week. I think you're not going to see him. You're not going to have a problem with him going over 300 yards. That's his lines, 299. That's happening. But if you look at the ladder, hey, 325 plus, you're going to get plus 140. That's almost 1.5 to 1. I think that's very likely. And if you want to go 350, you get plus 220 on your money. Certainly very much in play with the kind of script that we see Colorado run, who's one of the worst rushing teams in the country. So those are my 3 ladder plays.
Yeah,
funny.
I like that.
Yeah, it's funny you crap on Colorado's rush defense when it's improved this year, but yeah, I do agree though.
We'll see against UCF.
Yeah, we will
talk about that game later.
Right.
Yeah, Brad and I are going to collab on a play in that game actually, but there's a lot of things that point to there could be a lot of points scored in that game. But my play is on that. I actually wrote down on the spreadsheet Shedeur Sanders 325 plus, and I saw you were right above that. So I was like, oh, well, I can't have the exact same play as Eric. So I went a route that's 13-1. You heard that right, 13-1. And it's UCF and Colorado each to score 10 points in the first quarter. Now, UCF has no pass rush whatsoever. They don't get pressure. We know Colorado's offensive line needs a matchup like that to keep Shutter Sanders upright so we could cash Eric's ladder plays. But everything sets up that UCF, what they're good at offensively, Colorado's bad at defensively. What UCF is good at offensively, same vice versa with Colorado defensively. So I just feel like there's a lot of good situations for both these offenses to put up points. And if you can give me a bet 13-1 in the first 15 minutes of the game, I'm going to take that most times. So, yeah, UCF, Colorado, both teams scored 10-plus points in the first quarter.
Exciting game. Man, I feel like, living down here in Orlando, they're doing so much, like the UCF, football marketing team. I feel like at one point they're having like Kodak Black come out in concert.
Kodak Black comes out. I'm taking UCF. I mean,
they want to win this game real bad, man. They want to make a statement here. Let me go to mine. I'm going back to Riley Leonard. I'm taking 70+ rushing yards at plus 225. Taking 90+ at plus 475 and plus 650. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Like 100 rushing yards in back-to-back games against a team who's let up basically 100-yard rushers in 2 games already so far this season. Man, I mean, like, even if you just take his base and you take 70+ at plus 220, you're getting a pretty good price on that. So for me, nothing crazy, but I feel like I'm going to steal a little money with Mr. Riley Leonard. All right, let's get over to the Big Ten slate. We're starting off with number 19, Illinois. At number 9, Penn State. Penn State laying 17.5, total set at 47.5. Go ahead and take this one first, Mr. Eric Froton, and tell me what prop you like in this game.
Yeah, with Illinois, we surprisingly, we've talked about it a couple of times. Everybody thinks Brett Bielema, head coach, you're going to get 3 yards in a cloud of dust, ground and pound football. But with seasoned Ole Miss transfer Luke Altmaier, in his second year as a starter, they're passing the ball a lot more than I think anybody realized. And they've been doing very effectively. Currently, it's 18th in success rate, passing success rate for this Illinois team. And the reason why is they're relying on short, precise passes to get their playmakers, Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin, get the ball in their hands and let them create. When it comes to their pass distribution, they rank 10th nationally. 45% of their passes are between 1 and 10 yards. Those quick hits to these receivers. They're trying to get them the ball in their hands to let them be essentially extended run plays. And that's really good because you look at Zachary Franklin, the transfer from UTSA, and what his role has been in this offense. The last 3 games against Kansas, Central Michigan, and Nebraska, 3 talented opponents. Well, 2 talented opponents. You've seen him catch 9, 5, and 5 passes. Got 6 targets, 8 targets, and 10 targets. All right. So he is a vital part of this offense. Currently listed at 3.5 receptions. He has smoked that each of these last 3 games. And playing against a Penn State team, which has been excellent against the run, but has allowed some big plays through the air. I think Illinois will be in a chasing script. They'll have to be throwing even a little more than they would like to, even though they've been undefeated. And you're going to see Zachary Franklin be used early and often. I think 3.5 receptions is a incredible buying opportunity. Give me that over.
For Franklin, for anybody who can't take receptions, what do you think about over 41.5 receiving yards?
I lean towards the over, yes. But, keep in mind, we are playing Penn State defense. They haven't really been challenged much this year. This is going to be a fun game. It's going to be a fun game. I'm not sure where to go. It's a 17.5 spread. I do think that's a lot, considering, we haven't seen Penn State tested. I lean Illinois on the spread, but that's why they play the games.
Yep.
I mean, James Franklin gets the covers usually for the donors, and this is a Saturday night game in Happy Valley.
Yes, right. Talking whiteout, we got bulletin board material for this game. Brett Bielema talking smack about the whiteout. So maybe that 17.5 isn't enough.
Maybe it's not, right? Like I was kind of confused about this game because I was pretty wrong about Illinois last game. I laid off it entirely. I leaned Penn State whiteout game. They love to cover these situations. I remember like when they played Ohio State as like a 4.5-point dog, they won outright. Like that's just the kind of stuff they do in these whiteout games. Do you have any leans for this one, Vaughn?
Yeah, so I was interested to see what Luke Oakmeyer's props pop up as. I didn't get to see all of his passing or rushing. I was curious about the rushing because this is going to be the hardest pass rush they face. I mean, Penn State's ranked 10th in the country in pass rush. As you said, Eric, no one's really gave them much of a run outside Bowling Green for 3/4, which was out of the blue. Shout out for that loss in the team total. Lost in the first 5 minutes, actually. But we know that favorites in these matchups where there's a 14-point favorite in ranked games, they cover pretty well. They're 31-21 against the spread. This being a whiteout obviously impacts this too. I think that's why we've seen the over move up a little bit because people expect a lot of points to be scored. But why Luke Altmaier has been great, it's when he has a clean pocket. I mean, he's the 4th graded quarterback in PFF when he has a clean pocket. When he's under pressure, he's 103rd. I think he's going to be under a lot of pressure Saturday night. So I would look at his unders rushing props. If we even get him, I think he's going to take some sacks. So I would be all over that.
Makes a ton of sense. Let's move over to the next game. Ohio State at Michigan State. Ohio State 23.5-point favorite. Total set at 48.5. For me, it was play the Buckeyes team total over 37.5 or nothing. You could still get that around even money. Buckeyes have hit this number, scored at least 40 plus points in every single game. Michigan State defensively are a little bit better than any of the opponents they're going to play. But my problem with Michigan State isn't their defense, it's their offense. Like, how is their offense going to possibly sustain drives? They're like in the 100th and offensive success rate. EPA is pretty similar. Aiden Childs is young, fresh, and it looks like he's young, right? Like he makes mistakes. If we remember early in week 0 where he threw interceptions on the goal line. Now he's going to have to play against a much stingier secondary and a better pass rush. What's he going to do under that heat? Sure, you can go ahead and take the 23.5 on the road, but I actually would just prefer to take the team total. I think like if this gets anywhere near the 48.5 points, Ohio State's going to be scoring the bulk of them.
Absolutely. And Ohio State's covered 7 straight against Michigan State. So, I mean, you're not getting anything from me negative from a team total spread perspective for the Buckeyes. Like I said, this is my team to win the Natty this year. I've loved what I saw from them. I mean, they've done everything correct. They have so many weapons on offense. I think scoring 40-plus points a game is something Ohio State could do any given game, and I think they're right up there with the Tennessees of the world when it comes to the best offenses. So I'm with you, Brad. That's the way I'd approach this game too. Any props for you, Eric?
Yeah, in terms of Michigan State, their offense, they're very inefficient on a down-to-down basis and really rely on big plays. That's all they can really do. Terrible in the red zone, 120th in red zone touchdown rate, 101st in success rate overall, and 95th in both success rate, rushing and passing. So I have a hard time seeing them being able to mount an effective attack against this Ohio State Jim Knowles-led defense. So that kind of brings me to is my play, which Quinshon Judkins listed at 72.5 rushing yards. He has destroyed that each of the last 2 games. Went for 109 against 2 games ago. Went for 170 over 170 last game against Western Michigan. Got 13 carries. I think with Ohio State likely to be in the lead, Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, and the first opportunity for them to play a team with a pulse, really, they're going to get to play with their food a little bit. They're going to get to bat around and play with the Spartans. I think they're going to enjoy it, and I think they're going to, as the game goes on, keep the pressure on by running the ball. And I think that means Quinshon Judkins ends up clearing 72.5 rushing yards.
Yes.
One of my good buddies, Ohio State grad, texted me, I believe it was Saturday night, and was like, my God, Quinshon Judkins is incredible, word for word. So I do like that prop. I think he has a big night. Vaughn, any thoughts for this game?
That was my Heisman pick at 100-1, Quinshon Judkins. 100-1. Yeah. So, I do like him as a sprinkle there. I think he's a phenomenal back. But, yeah, one thing I'll say about Ohio State is you could same game parlay guys that score touchdowns and get pretty decent prices. And when you think, oh, my God, how do you pick 3 guys to score for Ohio State? It's actually pretty simple. You just take 2 running backs and you pick either Will Howard or one of the receivers. I mean, it's worked almost every single week for me. So the same 4 or 5 guys score. That's the way I'd approach it. But I'm with you, Brad. Like I said, team total over or the spread. Those are the ways to play this one.
All right, let's kick it over. Wisconsin at number 13, USC, 15.5-point favorite are the Trojans. Total set at 51.5. I'm going to take this first, and I'm going to go ahead and take Wisconsin team total under 17.5 points, right? I was really shocked when I was looking at USC this season. I was doing, this breakdown so far this season. I wanted to see, like, everyone says their defense got better. Did their tackling get better? Were they not allowing their opponents to score when they get in those plus territory situations? And the answer is yes, right? Like, if you look at their net points per drive, massive impact, massive upgrade from last season. Another thing that I want to look at this USC team is, can they sustain drives? And yes, absolutely. Great net field position. More so, how they're sustaining the drives. Yeah, I think Miller Moss is not costing them so many times by holding the ball as long as Caleb Williams did. But also, like, this is a USC team that gave up 33 sacks last season. The sacks have came way down. And then when you look at Wisconsin, they're in trouble, right? They switched to Braden Locke. This was a team that wanted to air raid, play fast, and that changed, right? Now they're going to have to run the ball without Van Dyke being in the game. And I don't think they're going to have that much success, right? USC run defense has been pretty solid. And when I say pretty solid, I have to have the caveat that you're going to break sometimes when a team's going to run the ball 50 times like Michigan did, right? Like, it's bound to happen. And I also think Michigan has a better offensive line, and we're at home in the big house. And more importantly, they have better running backs. I don't think Wisconsin score enough points here. And one more thing to kind of help out, like, I think they're going to learn from their mistakes, right? They're going to learn from that situation of losing as almost a touchdown favorite on the road. Now they're going to put in work. I don't see Wisconsin scoring a ton of points. 17.5. It's a little juiced at -125, but there's no way they're hitting this over.
Yeah, I like that too. I think one of the under is probably the very sharp play here because, Braden Locke in Wisconsin, they could use him to an advantage here, right? They got a bye week too. They could have implemented a lot of things that make him comfortable, some trick plays. That's the way that Wisconsin here covers that spread. Let's not act like they're about to do anything amazing offensively. Yeah. That's how they need trick plays. But I do want to ask you a question, Brad, because Wisconsin has not traveled to the West Coast very often, right? And USC, when they're coming off a loss, they are 3-4 straight up and 2-5 against the spread with Lincoln Riley. The over is 5-2 in those games. Now, granted, those are Pac-12 defenses, but how many times have you traveled to the West Coast or to California since 2005? Do you think it's more than a handful of times, right?
Yeah, a ton. I've probably done it like 4 or 5 times.
We'll ask you, Eric, because we know you're out there on the West Coast. But Wisconsin Badgers have only played 5 games in that time zone since 2005.
Wow.
And they were favorites in all of those games. Okay, 1-4 against the spread. Now they're a dog. So certainly a situation where I don't want to back Wisconsin here. A lot of things don't set up well. I would lean the under here, so I do like your play, Brad. I haven't been the team total king this year. You need to take that from me. So I'll ride with you in that spot.
I think I've only hit 1 team total, so I'm not going to.
That's all you need to be ahead of me this year, my friend.
All right, kick it off, Eric. Tell us what player prop you like in this game.
Yeah, when it comes to Wisconsin, what do they do well? Let's not pass the ball. We know that even with Tyler Van Dyke, they ranked dead last in yards per successful dropback. Simply brutal. But they run the ball pretty well, and they rank 15th in rushing success rate, 26th in power success rate, 7th in opportunity rate. So they can advance the ball forward. They're not breaking big plays running the ball, but they're marching. And what we know about USC is they spent a lot of time and effort into sort of revamping that secondary, and they have. They're much, much better this year. But rushing, they're getting hit for big plays. They're averaging 13.5 yards per successful rush. It ranks 132nd. It's the 3rd worst in the country. In terms of yards per rush without sacks included, they're averaging 5.6 yards per carry that they're allowing. That's 115th nationally. And then lastly, they rank 113th in yards before contact. So every rusher on average is getting 2.5 yards down the field before they even touch them. That gets to my play, which is Chez Malusi, running back for Wisconsin. Now, do I expect him to run for 1,000,000 yards? No. But at 49.5 rushing yards, he went 11 for 66 last week against Alabama. They were getting absolutely destroyed in that game. He's getting 66 yards against Bama. That interests me. Game before, 16 carries for 60. And the game before that, 19 for 74. So he's gone 60 or more in every game. Just did it against Bama for 66, and he was used often. Got 5 targets, caught 4 of them. Proved that he was pretty much all they could do on offense. I just think with him likely to get 15 carries no matter what the script is against USC because they can't throw the ball. I like Ches Malusi to go over 49.5 rushing yards.
I like that. Let's move over to the next game. Nebraska coming off a disappointing loss, laying 10 points at Purdue, coming off a disappointing loss. 47.5 is the total. Go ahead and kick things off with your first play, Eric.
Oh, yeah, we got plenty of plays here. And week in, week out, say it with me, as is customary. If you're going to give me a Dylan Raiola rushing line, I'm going to take it. And once again, here we are, 5.5 rushing yards. If you remember last week, we were in a similar situation. And let's just say Mr. Raiola did not fare well. 7 carries, minus 52 yards against Illinois. They were all over him. Now, look, fine. Northern Iowa, you can hit it. All right, that's fine. I just think against a Purdue team that while they are a horrific run defense, they can actually rush the pass for a little bit. And I don't think it's going to be a case where they're going to have to do too much in order to beat Purdue. I think they don't want to put Raiola certainly in harm's way. We saw that Notre Dame had him up 42-0 in halftime. They went and got smoked by Oregon State. This is going to be a nice, easy dub for Nebraska. I can't believe this is a 10-point spread, okay? I don't care if it's at Purdue. Myself and Brad last year, right? What did we do last year, Brad?
We went
Friday
to
night game.
Yeah, Wisco-Purdue.
Wisconsin-Purdue. And what happened? Wisconsin absolutely mauled them on the line. They just decided, all right, we're just going to run the ball over them and do it. Great. This is going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
Dylan Raiola is not an RPO quarterback. They're not going to have to worry about running their big 250-pound Pat Mahomes clone and getting him into danger. There's no need for this against Purdue. Easy, big blowout victory. Take Nebraska minus 10. Take the under on Dylan Raiola rushing yardage, as is customary. And one more special one for you. One that I love, like co-best bet territory. Jason Tibbs, wide receiver for Purdue. Okay. We just talked about what I don't think is going to happen. I don't think they're going to be throwing the ball particularly much against Nebraska. Nebraska ranks second nationally with a 45% pressure rate. Again, 1 out of every 2 times the quarterbacks are dropping back, they're being harassed. That's bad news. Bad news for Hudson Card. And even worse news for Jerron Tibbs. Jerron Tibbs last week in a 38-21 game against Oregon State. 3 targets, caught 0. Game before that against Notre Dame. Again, think we had a passing script in that 66-7 blowout. 2 targets. He caught 1 for 3 yards. The only time he's had any success all season was game 1 against Indiana State. FCS, Indiana State. They beat him 49-0, and he caught 4 passes for 30 yards. I don't even understand why he's listed. 22.5 yards. Best bet under. Best bet.
This game is funny. I was on another show, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, when I said that, it was against Notre Dame, and I was like, I'm taking Notre Dame -6 or -7, what it was at the time, and they gave me some pushback about how much potential this Purdue team has, and I'm not seeing it yet, right? 128th in EPA margin, 128th in offensive success rate, 127th in net points per drive. We're just talking about offensively, right? Offense bad, but then we get the defense. Yes, they get a little bit better on defensive success rate, maybe 68th, somewhere around there, but they're 133rd EPA against the run, success rate against the run on defense, 88th in the country. What does that lead me to believe? Leads me to believe that Nebraska is going to come in to Purdue and have their way with them. Purdue is one of those teams where you think about offensive line undersized to compete against a Nebraska defensive line that's bigger. Their defensive linemen not as big as the offensive linemen for Nebraska. This game's going to be won in the trenches, and they're going to go to their primary back. So early in the season, it was a little bit of like I want to say a battle between Dante Dowdle and Ramir Johnson. And even if you talk to the people who like the alumni, the people who are close to the football team, they were waiting for someone to kind of separate themselves. And I think that game against Colorado, Dowdle kind of separated himself as the bell cow. I'm taking Dante Dowdle 75+ rushing yards. he's going to get the carries. And like I said, he's going against a really porous defensive front seven there. They're going to lean on their running game, right? Like they probably should have leaned on a little bit more. He carried the ball 20 times though. Like how much more do you want to lean on it? But I think they're going to get back to the basics with Raiola. A couple situations they asked for him to do a little bit too much, especially in that overtime, and it cost them. This is a game they're going to have a positive game script. And it's one of those where if you want to lay the points, go ahead and lay it. I'm not going to stop you because I think they absolutely bludgeon. That's an Eric Froton word. They absolutely bludgeon the Boilermakers.
Yeah, this one seems it's a situation where it might be just too easy again. Like, it's like almost like the LSU UCLA spread last week, where it's like this spread should be what it is or higher. But I feel like Nebraska should be laying anywhere from 10 to 14 in this game. But Ryan Walters, we knew this was going to be a project for him. We knew this team, the taking over was not going to be simple for Purdue, and it hasn't been by any means. So I love everything you guys said because I think Nebraska has the running back committee to get the job done itself and take the pressure off Dylan Raiola. So I'm with you. I think the prop market is kind of the way to go here. And if you're laying points to one of these teams, it's got to be from Nebraska with everything we've seen so far.
Let's move over to number 8, Oregon, laying 25.5 at UCLA. We touched on this a little bit. I just want to say I was going to be on Dylan Gabriel over 29.5 passing yards. I did get a little caught up. I'm going to be honest. I did get a little caught up when the lines dropped. I didn't get a chance to shop it. So anybody who is interested in Dylan Gabriel's passing yards, I like it. I just don't have the number that I want to play because I want to be able to shop it around. UCLA's pass defense not good, giving up a ton of 300 plus quarterbacks so far this season. And it looks like Oregon's kind of figured it out. At the beginning of the season, when I talked about the differences between Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel, this is going to be tough. Dylan Gabriel, Dylan Raiola, who we were just talking about. But Dylan Gabriel is the difference in yards per attempt and the difference in efficiency. Bo Nix, higher in efficiency, lower in yards per attempt. Well, the beginning of the season started for Oregon, and they were pretty much in the Bo Nix script where these were short passes. If you look, yards per attempt weren't that high, but the efficiency wasn't there. But that's not why you go out and you get a Dylan Gabriel. You get a Dylan Gabriel to go out and hit guys like Tez Johnson. You get a Dylan Gabriel to go out and hit guys like Evan Stewart on these big, long passes. I think they'll have success through the air, and I think his number was around 299. I'm going to be on it. If you like the over, I think you should take it. Any thoughts on that or anything else, Eric, that you like prop wise in this game?
Yeah, you open at 290.5, which is interesting, and certainly the first upon first take, it's like 290.5 against UCLA here, but I understand it makes sense why it's steamed up to 299. I gave my play over there on Ethan Garbers, and I will be at this game. I will also be at.
Enjoy.
Oh yeah. Oh guys, I get big news. I'll be at USC Wisconsin at 12:30, and I'll be driving to Pasadena for 8 p.m. Oregon UCLA. So I'll be on the field for both of those games. I'll be giving out some plays. Of course, I'll make sure I have a play. Even though, gosh, I don't know how I'll be able to give out a play for UCLA Oregon. It's the last game of the night. I'll try to get one out there for it, but just be on the lookout for that. So really excited to be at the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely love that. Enjoy, be safe, and make us some money while we're at home. And I'll say about this, I like the prop angle for you, Brad. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier absolutely lit them up last week.
Yeah.
In a game where they led by 2 touchdowns, majority of that game, 44 pass attempts, 352 yards. But what I noted when I looked at this game, it would be an Oregon or pass spot for me. Since 1990, before I was born, UCLA has not been back-to-back games of 20-plus underdogs. All right, so I do not think they probably cover this one. It's a very tough game going back-to-back at LSU, coming back across the country now to play Oregon. And since 2000, Oregon has had UCLA's number. Not only have they won 15 out of 18, but they've covered 11 of those 18 games with one push. So certainly good numbers to be backing Oregon here if you're a late-night bettor. And we know most people will be chasing Oregon, so get them now if you like them before that number increases.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Before we move on to the People's Parlay, I have to tell you, it's the President's Cup week, right? Find out if the United States can continue its dominance at the President Cup this week when golf's biggest stars face off at Royal Montreal Golf Club. Watch Thursday through Sunday on NBC, Golf Channel, and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
People's Parlay. I know this is a family show, but wow. Holy shit. Plus 5.94 units. My God. I didn't even know that number was right because I remember last season, there was a point in the People's Parlay when we were like -8 units or something.
Yeah.
We are positive 2-2 so far. If you are a $100 unit better, you are up $594. Kick things off on with your first People's Parlay leg.
All right. We got the push last week, Eric. That's why taking key numbers is important, baby. +3. But I like Baylor money line, not the -2.5, not the -3 or -3.5. I think the Bears get a home win here. We know that teams that are not ranked at home, favored over a ranked road team, perform very well, and that's what Baylor is. So I like the Bears money line there.
Yeah, I'm going to go with.
Wait, Eric, before you go, I just want to say this. I think we've said this 3 weeks in a row. I know you don't like take money lines. I see that you're on a spread. Go ahead and tell me what spread you like.
Duke -2.5. They were actually all right, underdogs when this opened. Somehow North Carolina was still favored. I don't know why that was the case. Has since steamed up to 2.5, and that's because if you watched North Carolina last week, you know that they literally do not have a human being on that roster who can make a forward pass. It's Omari and Hampton or bust for all of North Carolina. It is literally that's all you're getting. With Duke, we've seen them, Manny Diaz as the DC coming in. Texas transfer QB, Malik Murphy, they have looked a lot more competent and well-formed in the aftermath of former head coach Mike Elko leaving for Texas A&M. I just think this is a clear Duke handles a listless North Carolina team that can't play defense and does not have a quarterback now that Max Johnson's hurt. Neither Jacoby Criswell or Connor Harrell has proven they can do anything. Bad news against a Manny Diaz-led defense. I cannot see North Carolina winning this. I don't mind the 2.5 points because they're going to win anyways. I'm 3-1 on the People's Parlay.
I love
Should be 4-0 if I had gone money line, as you said. But this is another easy winner.
Hey, we don't learn from our mistakes here. We just keep going. Right?
No.
I'm going for another win here. Make it 3 wins in a row. And I'm going an under. Brad's not normally a full game under better. I like team totals better, but I'm going back to the game I talked about earlier. Wisconsin-USC under 51.5 points. I actually think that USC is okay with playing this game a little bit slower because they know they have the advantage of having a better quarterback and a better offense, which means if they limit the mistakes, put themselves in advantageous situations, they win the game. We'll see what happens, but I like under 51.5. I actually think that this is going to go down. I think we're going to see this number close around 49.5. By my numbers, I think we're seeing some 50s.5 pop up. So just make sure you get that number in early. The People's Parlay this week, Duke -2.5 against North Carolina, Wisconsin at USC under 51.5, and then Baylor money line versus BYU. $10 pays you $59.22. 2 cents. Let's go over to our favorite bets of the week, the ones that we didn't get to in the earlier segments. Vaughn, I know we have a collab. I'm going to let you hit that first. So go ahead and talk about the collab between us, and I'll touch back if you miss anything that I love about that game.
We are holding our nose. We're taking the Buffaloes down in Central Florida. Plus 14.5, plus 15, whatever number you can get. I know there's 15.5s out there as well. I snagged that, but we spoke on it. I mean, Eric said, Colorado has no rush defense whatsoever. UCF's going to be able to run all over them, but the Knights also have no pass rush whatsoever. Their blitz rate is ranked 106th in the country. They have a pressure rate of 77th, and now they got to try and sack Shedeur Sanders. I mean, this guy, he has been able to create on his own. I've absolutely loved everything that he's been able to do. I think he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks, to be honest, just from a visual standpoint. No statistics. From a visual standpoint, he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks. So I like Colorado plus 14.5 as my first play. Brad, before we get back to that, I'm going to roll through the other two. But you guys mentioned UNC and Duke. No defense. I'm taking the under. 56 in Duke versus North Carolina. Listen, I've been on such a bad streak the first month of the season. The easiest thing for me to do would take an over in a North Carolina game, but historically bad teams that have allowed 50-plus points in the last 5 years in the previous game, the under has actually gone 48, 24, and 1 since 2019. So certainly under looks pretty good there for that game. And Brad, hop back in and tell me what you think. But what's crazier is taking the under in a UNC Duke game or taking Colorado plus the points?
No, actually, I like both of those, right? You have a Duke team who certainly doesn't have a quarterback that is capable of just consistently pushing the ball down the field. Would rather take off first in Malik Murphy there. And then you have a North Carolina team who is like down to like their 5th quarterback, and it's their Amari Hampton show. He's going to run the ball 30 times minimum in that game. So under script all the way. And I am on Colorado plus 14 against my UCF Knights. Don't tell Stephen DeAugustino, the producer. Do not tell him. I don't want him to disown me. And why I say his name is because I remember being at UFC 306, little humble brag there, the Sphere, in the media center with Stephen, watching the TCU game, watching Hoover absolutely tear the UCF defense apart. 400 passing yards in that game. If you didn't watch the game and you just saw the final score, you're like, wow. UCF scored 15 points in the 4th quarter. They won the game. They scored 35 points. What a great game. That game was terrible. Anything TCU wanted to do through the air, they could do it. UCF could not get off the field. Now you have Shedeur Sanders coming here, who's a more talented passer of the football against UCF. I think this game stays close. And even if it doesn't, right, UCF doesn't have the quarterback ability in KJ Jefferson to where if this is going to be a shootout between the two, it's going to be an arm battle and KJ Jefferson is going to go nuts. No, how they cover the spread, the Knights, would be through RJ Harvey. You know what's coming. RJ Harvey's line is set at 116.5, right? Like he's going to run the ball 25 times in this game because that is their offense. I'm scared of Colorado's rush defense, but I do believe from what I've seen against TCU, unless they clean up, and this is not something that's just a 1 week thing that I've seen. This has been Gus Malzahn in this era where the defense is not tackling. They're not getting off the field on 3rd downs. I think it stays close. It's 14.5, right? This game ends on 14. We still get paid. That's my only alternate bet. So I'm going to let Eric go ahead and kick off his 3 that he likes.
Yeah, well, you set me up pretty good by mentioning that UCF TCU game where Josh Hoover went for 400 plus. So I appreciate that, Brad. I am going to take Josh Hoover again. I had him that week, and I have him again this week. He's listed at 24.5 completions. Yes, give it to me. They're playing Kansas, who is pretty good at restricting the deep passes, but you can kind of throw them underneath, and that's what TCU does in terms of the last 3 games. Well, they've only played 3 games this year against FBS opponents. We're not going to count that one against LIU. He completed 28, 35, and 28 passes. We're at 24.5 here. Attempts, 43, 52, and 42. I mean, he's currently at 38.5 attempts. I think he probably clears that too, but the completions are going to be a little easier. I think they keep it short. So I kind of like that aspect of things against Kansas. And I'm going to take Hoover's over 24.5. Next, Baron Morton, QB, Texas Tech. Much like Dylan Raiola, we know that Texas Tech does what they want to do. This is offensive coordinator Zach Kittley. They will hand the ball off to Taj Brooks, but at the same time, they want to throw the ball with quick timing, precision passes, generally to inside receivers. Now, where that stacks up for Behren Morton is he does not run the ball very often. In fact, he doesn't run the ball pretty much at all as long as he doesn't have to. He'll scramble, but there's nothing designed for Morton. This year, last week, minus 15 rushing yards. Week before, -1. He got 7 rushing yards against Wazoo, and then -5 against Texas Abilene. Okay? When you have, for the season, -14 yards, the only over was a 7-yarder, and you're lining him at 6.5 rushing yards, give me the under. Behren Morton, 6.5 rushing yards all day, all night. Lastly, Cam Cook was my best bet on the Fantasy Life show on Saturday with my boy Thor. His under came in spades. What does TCU do? They throw the ball, as discussed. They haven't been running the ball at all. And even Cam Cook, he's been completely ineffective. 10 carries, 24 yards last week. You're going to go and throw him up there at 56.5 again? Not on my watch. Under again for Cam Cook, 56.5 receiving yards.
Absolutely love it. Almost got 3 unders out of you there. I would have loved to see that, but we'll just go back to back unders here because I'll give you another one, guys. The lowest total of the college football season is this week. It's Air Force and Wyoming. A 34 is the game total, or 33.5, depending where you're shopping. Both these teams are combined 0-7 against the spread. Don't even play the spread. Play the under. Air Force is that bad offensively, 10.3 points per game. Wyoming might just be as bad, but the most interesting thing about this, Brad, last year the score was 34-27. The total was 42. And now that they dropped the total by 8 points.
Holy smokes.
I don't think it's enough. So I'm going under 34.
Vaughn and his sweaty unders. Let's get to the best bets.
We're somehow. Got to do it somehow.
We're doing pretty good at the best bets. I'll kick off mine first. We kind of talked about this. I'm on Khalil Mullings, over 81.5 rush yards. Do we need to even get into like what Michigan is going to do in their game plan? Can we just talk about Minnesota for a second? I'm going to just say these numbers off the top of my head because I have no idea where I wrote this down at. But if you watched Caleb Johnson against Minnesota last week, I feel like he had over 200 rushing yards. Then the week before that, the running back had over 100. This is Khalil Mullings' backfield in Michigan. You know what they're going to do. They're going to run the ball. All I need them to do now is just add in some wing T and just go ahead and fully commit because the man is explosive, good offensive line, gained some confidence. That entire group did. And I actually think they're going to throw in some little razzle dazzle, make it a little more exotic. It was pretty straightforward. When you're having success just running the ball between the tackles, like just run the ball between the tackles. But I think they're going to keep growing on the Billy, like some more RPO with actually the P part, right? With actually passing the ball, which is going to open up those running lanes a little bit more. I like Khalil Mullings. He's clearly the back. I actually wrote something this morning on X that said, there's two things. You're either going to take Mullings 100 plus, or you're going to take Donovan Edwards under. And it's no knock on Donovan Edwards. It's just, this is the Mullings show. So Michigan running back over 81.5 rushing yards is my best bet. Go ahead. And any thoughts on this, Vaughn?
I mean, Mullings has potential to be one of the wagons of the year, in my opinion. And Caleb Johnson, too, is a guy we missed out on the past month because he has been absolute on a tear. So I do like those. And Donovan Edwards, it's all good. You still on the NCAA football case and the cover. So you got something to hang your hat on the national championship. But my best bet is going to be those Baylor Bears, -3. BetMGM's hanging the 3 for us. Some other places are starting to transition to 3.5. I just think it's a situation where BYU is being overvalued. Yes, they are 4-0 against the spread, but they seemed, if you look back on it, they seemed like the most obvious choice last week to knock off a ranked team solely because they were the only spread under 10 for a ranked team. That's Kansas State that they beat. BYU switching time zones, playing at a 12 Eastern kickoff. It's going to be a bad situation for the Cougars. So Baylor should have won last week, but a Shadur Sanders Hail Mary kept them away from it. So I like the Bears -3 as my best bet.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that Purdue game as we discussed and go with Hudson Card. He is listed at 16.5 rushing yards. Now, that's an important key number because over the 3 games that Purdue has had this season, he has cleared that once, and that was against Oregon State last game. He only had 3 carries, for 33 yards. He broke contain, but he didn't give up any sacks. Now, the previous game where they played against they played against Notre Dame, he was sacked 4 times for 40 yards, and he rushed for negative 42 yards. I think we're going to see a lot more of a Notre Dame type of a game with, as we discussed, Nebraska 45% pressure rate. They're going to be all over Hudson Card as it is. And with the fact that they're already a terrible pass blocking team with a great pass rushing team, that's a bad combination. I think they're going to have no problem getting to him. And I doubt Hudson Card ends up in positive territory. All about that 16.5-yard under rushing.
I feel like you kind of answered this. Looks like market consensus is now around 14.5. Would you still play it at that number?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, boys, this was fun. Anybody watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button and the subscribe. Listening in podcast form, make sure you download and rate us. Another great week of college football. For Eric Proton and Vaughn Delzell, I'm Brad Thomas. Thanks for tuning in.